keep getting asked, where's Trader Joe's? I have no control over that whatsoever.
I probably get a call at least once a week.
Really?
Same question.
Asking?
Yeah, people ask.
Sorry I brought it up.
Meh.
They are hardcore. They are very hardcore Trader Joe's folks. I'm not going to say I haven't driven an hour to go to a Trader Joe's because I have, but usually I try to make it with something else. All right. Where's our other members here? Sadly, we cannot hold a meeting, just the two of us.
And then,
We should have
you know,
two more.
and then whenever, I wasn't sure if you guys did that on purpose.
Which
The
one?
microphones, they're standing up straight.
We
Okay.
did, just because we were talking to
Okay.
Keith.
No,
Yep.
it's totally fine. I was gonna be like, come out and tell you to
Yeah.
fix them before we start.
Yep. No, I
Sometimes
got
people
you.
forget.
Yeah. Just so it wasn't echoing in all your
Yeah, no.
headphones while we were just chatting. There's treasure to shame. It's gone the wrong way. Can I start the meeting with him, and if Member Primo joins us, he can join in as, or should I wait another couple minutes?
You can start it
6:32.
with him, but just so the applicants know, you have to have a yes vote from everyone in order to get approved, because there's only 3 members of the 5. So just so you're aware.
Yeah, okay. Although maybe this is Member Primo coming in. Oh. There's Phil. Hello. You didn't happen to see Mr. Primo out there in the parking lot, did you?
I did not.
Okay. Gonna give it another minute, just to give you all as much of a board as we can give you. Well, I'm gonna get started because I have a feeling Mr. Primo may have forgotten we had a meeting this evening. It's been a while since we've had a meeting, so.
Yes.
Good evening. It is 6:34 p.m. and this is the Meridian Charter Township Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Today is Wednesday, October 19th, 2022. And I will now call this meeting to order and starting with a roll call. So Member Koenig,
Present.
Treasurer DeShane,
Present.
and Chair Mansour is present. We have a 3-member board this evening to begin with. Hopefully, we will have a 4th if Member Primo joins us. And if not, I do want to let the applicants know you do need a full 3 positive vote to approve your variance. Likewise, 3 negative votes to deny your variance. So therefore, we apologize for the brevity of our board, but I promise we'll make fair choices and decisions as we always do. That said, we will get started with an approval of tonight's agenda. Yes,
move
Member
approval.
DeShane.
The agenda is presented.
Okay. So moved by Member DeShane and supported by Member Koenig. So this is a vote to approve tonight's agenda. Member Koenig.
Yes.
Member DeShane?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so the agenda is approved. Moving on to corrections, approval and ratifications of minutes from, let's start with July 20th, 2022.
I move to approve minutes from July 20th.
Okay, move to
Support.
approve. All right. And this is a vote to approve minutes from July 20th, 2022. Member Koenig?
Yes.
Member DeShane?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. May I
Absolutely.
have one comment on the minutes from July 20th?
Absolutely.
If
What did
you-
you notice?
Well, it's nothing to change.
Okay.
And I'm not, this is nothing to staff who does the minutes. I know it's a tedious process.
Absolutely.
This was way back in July, so
Right.
I can't even remember that far back. I can't remember what I did a week ago, so.
Absolutely.
If you look at the second page of the minutes, or maybe it's the first page,
Okay.
there is about 6 or 7 lines down. It starts with Member Koenig noted the garage at 6112 Columbia Street. You see that? It's about the 4th or 5th line
Yes,
down.
I see that.
Toward
Yep.
the end of that sentence, it says, "So there should be no issue in granting a variance in this case."
Okay.
I just wanted to put on the record that,
Clarify.
yeah, just a clarification. I'm not knocking the staff for doing the minutes. It's probably more than likely what I said.
Yes.
I obviously don't remember all the way back to July, but when I mentioned that, that was more of a personal thought that I believed at the time that
Yeah.
with the information on the record and the facts and the findings and all that, that my personal preference was that I don't see an issue with the variance. The way that's worded, it could be taken from a member of the public that I was trying to speak on behalf of the whole board.
Yes,
And that was
I
not my
see.
intent on that.
Yes.
So I just wanted to clarify, even though
Okay.
I do not have any issues with anything else with the minutes, obviously, since we
Okay.
voted to approve them anyways.
Yes, so noted, and I think that that helps, and we all want to, my chair just keeps getting shorter and shorter, excuse me. We all just want to make sure that we are heard properly and clearly and speaking on our own behalf, so I appreciate
Yes.
that. All right, moving on to the August minutes, August 17th, and I have a note before we make a motion, and that is that unfortunately I was not available that day. And on the public remarks, it says Chair Mansour opened the floor remarks and that I closed the public remarks, but I promise you I wasn't here, I was having surgery. So, correction to Vice Chair Field Foster opening the floor for public remarks and closing remarks in that case. And with those notes, I will move to approve the August 17th minutes.
Support.
Supported by Member DeShane, and this is a vote to approve those minutes with the clarification. Member Koenig.
Yes.
Member DeShane.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, so those minutes are approved with those clarifications. And now, let's see, I think we are ready to, we have quite a few communications, and that I'm sure that we can add into the presentation. I believe all of the communications received were in regards to the first case. Is that correct, Mr. Chapman?
That's correct.
Okay, so therefore,
We did have that separate one for
the second
the
case.
second case, yes.
From the
Homeowners
Township
Association.
engineer, from the homeowners association, okay.
Yes.
So we can add that in during that case as well. Noted that we received a positive communication from the homeowners association for the second case this evening. And we also have an addition that you will add in from the township, one of the township engineers for the second case as well. So we will move on to new business. ZBA case number 22-10-19-1, Schultz, Blaine Schultz, 4496 Oakwood Drive, Okemos, 48864. And with that, I will give it to Mr. Chapman.
Good evening. So this is a request for a variance from section 86 373E5A front yard. The front yard setback on Hamilton Road is 85 feet from the center line. So the applicant is intending to demolish the existing 1,302 square foot single-family home and construct a new 1,865 square foot single-family home at 2205 Hamilton Road. According to Township records, the existing 1 3/4 story home was constructed in 1891. At its closest point, that existing home is approximately 50 feet from the center line of Hamilton Road. The new one-story single-family home is proposed to be 50 feet as well from the center line of the right-of-way. In your packet, the applicant has provided a letter of map amendment that shows the area of the proposed house is outside of the floodplain. So section 86367 is the township map that designates setbacks. That's 85 feet from the center line. The proposed home at its closest point, like I said, is 50 feet. So a variance of 35 feet is requested. And if you'll remember, as in some past cases, there's an alternative route that allows the Zoning Board of Appeals to establish the required front yard setback. So section 86561 states any front yard in any single family residential district may be reduced below the minimum required when the front yards of the existing principal structures within 200 feet of a proposed principal building location are less than the minimum required. So I provided a table that shows some of those approximate setbacks that are within the 200 feet of the subject property. So the board, if they choose, can just establish the front yard setback for this property under this section, bypassing the need for the variance. And there's a table that shows all of the setbacks.
Yep.
If I can find it. Right there.
Great. Okay. And as noted previously, we had several letters from those neighbors in support of this variance. And then I think included in the packet too is information from both FEMA and, is it just FEMA? Yes, looks like it. That's it, right, Keith?
Yep.
Okay. All right. In that case, if the applicant or the applicant's representative would like to speak and add anything else to what Mr. Chapman said, you're welcome to come up to the podium. I just ask that you give your name and address for the public record. And then once you say what you need to say, we will get into our board time and talk about the case.
Good evening, Blaine Schultz, 4496 Oakwood Drive, Okemos, Michigan, 48864. Mr. Chapman did a good job of summarizing everything that we had in our packet. And as I say, we went around and talked to all the neighbors in immediate proximity. And we're requesting this as we believe that it'll be actually an enhancement and no further back than any of the existing properties and the property that is there. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to try and answer questions. We're going to be using Mayberry Homes to build the home. We already have a design picked out.
Okay, great. If you'd like to stick up there while we get into our board time, that'd be great. And then if we have
Sure.
any questions to ask you, we can just go ahead and ask. With that, if there's anybody else that would like to speak on this case, you may come up and do so now. All right, if not, I will close public comment and we will get into our board time. All right. All right, anybody have anything they want to ask or check?
Keith, could you bring up the picture of the property again?
Yeah. The satellite view?
Yeah.
Okay.
How deep is this lot?
It's pretty deep. Let me see if I can.
300 feet
3
approximately.
feet, okay.
Yeah.
It is a deep lot.
293, 294.
My question to you would be, since you are doing a new construction, why do you want to build it as close to the curb as you have when you've got all this depth to work with?
to keep it out of the floodplain. That where we're building it, essentially, we had cabs go out and survey the
Okay.
lot, and essentially where the floodplain line is. That's why the existing house is, I think, is where it is, you know, that's where the floodplain line is. That's where a reasonable house will fit and be
understand.
outside of the floodplain.
About, on this map, where does the floodplain approximately start? Right there? Okay, yes.
It's pretty close to the back of the house.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
Right, it-
what, like
the
two, it'd be
existing-
like 2 feet from the back of the house.
But I think depending on how far
Yeah.
over we put it, I think at 10 feet over, it's never closer than 5.5 feet from the floodplain. And one side is like 15 feet and the other side is 9 because the line kind of goes in an S.
And is the house currently occupied?
No, it's an estate, and the house itself is not livable. I mean, it's a tear down. Yeah,
But it does go back to 1895, did I hear?
91.
Oh, 1891.
Yeah, it was originally next door to the east, and it actually had been moved. And the house that's to the east, it was the same family. They built a new home like in 1920, I think.
Okay. Is there any historical value of anything in the older house that you'll preserve before you tear it down?
No. The folks that own it, you know, didn't say that it's an old home that's fallen apart.
Old but not historical. So.
You know, we have so few
Right.
older homes in this country in general, and it's something going back to the 19th century is remarkable all by itself. It's a shame that there is nothing that's preservable or worth preserving. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I am very sorry to do this. I have a babysitter emergency who's calling me repeatedly. Oh, okay. This is why. I am very, very sorry to do this. I need to take a brief recess just so I can make sure she's okay because
Okay.
she's having a car issue and she's got my children.
Torn up all summer, as we know. We are raising Grand River by,
18 inches.
Uh,
Go up more than that.
in yeah. some yeah. And it's not easy to raise a major state highway for 2 feet. But it needs to be done.
I got a swift education in FEMA and LOMA and how the floodplain and the floodway of the floodplain works.
The babysitter's car won't start. She has to go pick up one of my kids. So sorry about that. I apologize, everyone. Okay. All right. With that, that was one of the questions I had, whether the home was historical in value or not. But I think other than that, my main question has already been answered, which was why it can't be any further off the road. And beyond that, I think I didn't have any other questions. Member Koenig, anything that you thought of?
I also had the historical question in mind about that when you see that number pop out. On that map that's in front of you there, that kind of squiggly line to the upper left, is that about the approximate location of where the floodway kind of stops?
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, that's what I figured. So-
And I think even this next, this one is the one that kind of got me, this image as to where the floodplain is, I mean, you're right.
Yes.
I mean, as tight within that.
Yeah,
Spot as you can be.
the break in the line is just where we had to put the paper on.
Right.
It's actually the
continuing.
chart shows that it's like I think that particular one where we're 10 feet off the west side.
Yeah.
It's 7.5 feet is the closest that it gets.
Okay. Yeah, with that, I'm confident going through the criteria. If anybody else has any questions, please go for it. And actually, I am curious what both of you feel about the the alternative to the variance and granting a, setting the front yard setback as opposed to granting a variance. Because I do feel like often, as opposed to granting the variance, giving this, kind of setting the setback in this way, we can acknowledge, I think all of us, that this is about where you can build on this property. So if we set the setback, not only do we not have variance that kind of is hanging around and following with the house, but we can, I think, all agree that this is about where, whatever happens with this plot of land in the future is where something is going to be buildable, so.
So we're setting it for this lot or the entire area?
It would be for this lot.
Okay.
Yeah, for only this lot.
Only-
But that would stay with this plot,
Okay.
yeah. So it avoids a variance, but it means that this is now attached to that going forward. Any
Are you looking for our thoughts? still?
thoughts? Yes. Thoughts on that versus,
Well, I just want to make one or
Yes,
ask
Mr.
one
Schultz, go for
clarifying
it.
question.
Yes, go ahead.
If the alternative methodology is adopted, what exactly is that? Is that the average of the other five that it says for the setback? What number will I be at?
It's what we can set it.
Okay.
I'll be honest, my thought process right now is that 50 feet feels like that's good to me. That's exactly what they're asking for. That fits within that average. I mean, there's only one house that is set like a little bit closer to the road. All the rest are set a little
The
bit
average
further
is
back.
50.4.
So, right, so 50 felt like a good number to me. That's when I was reading this packet, that's kind of what I thought, well, if we go this route, I feel like 50 is the, makes the most sense. And again, that avoids that variance being kind of hanging around.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question to staff?
Member Kanan, go for it.
Mr. Chapman? If we were to go that route, obviously this variance goes away. Does the applicant get refunded their money for the variance?
No, it's still part of the appeals process, so it's not
Okay.
like a separate thing.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. I had wondered about that when I
Right.
read that.
Right.
My, I guess, thought on that is, to be honest with you, I've never seen any code language like that, any other code that I've ever worked with. I think it's pretty interesting. And I'm just afraid, and this is just my own personal thought, I'm just afraid that it makes it seem like we're trying to, the board is coming up with a new setback for one single property.
Yeah.
And to me, it'd be different if the board had the option of changing setbacks for entire zone district. Or
Okay.
entire area, which
or a block or something like that.
probably is not even in the purview of this board. It's probably more for the planning commission and going forward.
Absolutely.
So I
Right.
kind of was scratching my head a little bit on that. If it obviously saved the applicant some money and they were to get their money back and not have to do the variance, then
Yeah.
I could see the benefit there.
Yeah.
If the payment already is going to go through, my personal preference is I don't have an issue with this variance. I think based on the records and everything on the fact with where the new building is going to be located at the same location of the existing one, which is at 50 feet. I don't have an issue myself personally. I can say that again for the record, just to clarify with the minutes, of voting yes for the variance. I personally don't,
Okay.
I'm very iffy about that other section
Okay.
of the code. That's just my personal thoughts.
Member Shane, thoughts?
I could go either way, but I'll agree with Member Koenig on this one. Excuse me. I too am in support of this variance,
Yeah.
and I'm content simply granting the variance request and not taking the second step. It might be worth looking at some future point. It just has to be as a special zoning districts up around the lake that when we have areas like we do here in Hamilton, to consider a special zoning district so that in the future we don't end up with these applicants asking for a variance for something that any sane board would grant automatically rather than forcing them to build in a floodplain.
Yeah, I think this area is definitely a candidate for looking at future setbacks on that road.
Yeah.
And reducing those.
Yeah. Okay. All right, well, in that case, since we all three are, need to vote in a block in order to pass or deny, Again, either way, I think it's nice to have this, this option, but, I mean, for me, it's either way. Either way, the solution is, I don't have, any issue with granting this variance as well. Looking through the criteria, unique circumstances exist. I can meet that criteria easily. Strict interpretation and enforcement of the literal terms of this chapter would result in practical difficulties. I also agree with that. I don't think that there's any way to get around building on this property without needing a variance of some kind. Between the floodplain and the space and shape of the lot and how close it is to the road there. So I can meet that criteria. Granting the variance is a minimum action. Again, I can meet just looking at this photo in front of us, I can meet that criteria that's the minimum action. Granting the variance will not adversely affect the adjacent land or property. I can meet that criteria. And granting the variance will be generally consistent with public interest, and I can grant that as well. So I can meet the variance criteria, so therefore I would move to grant the variance for case number 22-10-19-1 Schultz, 2205 Hamilton Road, as is.
I support that. I support that motion.
Okay. And any more discussion on the motion?
You summarized it very well. I think anything more needs to be said.
Okay, in that case, this is a vote to approve the variance for 22-10-19-1 Schultz. Member Koenig?
Yes.
Member DeShane?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So your variance has been approved. So you are all set.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay. Now, before we get started, I'm very sorry, my babysitter still cannot start her car.
Yeah, so we'll get an approval letter. Probably do it.
That interruption, and we will get right back to, let's see. I'm gonna scroll back up to my agenda here. Where are we? Case number 22-10-19-2, Smith. And with that, I will give it to Mr. Chapman.
So the applicant's requesting a variance from section 86-436R, standards for variance by the Zoning Board of Appeals from the strict interpretation of regulations set forth in 86-436. So the applicant's requested a variance to construct a 640 square foot deck located in the floodplain at 4810 Arapahoe Trail. The property is approximately 0.558 acres in size and is zoned RAA single family low density. So the site plan shows an existing two-story, 3,296 square foot single family house built in 1975 The proposed deck is 20 feet by 32 feet for a total of 640 square feet, and it's located on the east side of the house. The deck's approximately 80 feet from the rear property line. The rear yard setback for that zoning district is 30 feet. The entire property is located in the floodway portion of the 100-year floodplain. The floodplain actually consists of two sections, the floodway and the floodway fringe. So the floodway is the channel of the watercourse and those portions of the adjoining floodplains which carry and discharge the base flood as determined by FEMA and as indicated on the flood insurance rate map. The floodway fringe is the portion of the base flood area that's outside of the floodway, which may generally be considered as the backwater area of the base flood. This property had two variances previously to allow construction in the floodway. In 1995, there was one for a garage addition, and in 2003, there was one for an addition to the front porch. The applicant has received approval from Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy to construct the deck. They stated that it will need to be anchored to prevent flotation or lateral movement. Section 86-436R allows for the Zoning Board of Appeals to grant a variance from the strict interpretation of regulations set forth in the Conservancy District section of the zoning ordinance. So there's criteria that the ZBA has to meet in addition to the 5 regular criteria in order for the variance to be granted. So number 1, no variance shall be granted for the development of new structures, the substantial improvement or relocation of old structures, or development of any kind within the floodway area when such development, construction, improvement, or relocation would cause any increase in flood levels associated with base flood elevation. 2A, a sufficient cause for granting the variance must be shown. B, a determination that failure to grant the variance would result in practical difficulty to the applicant. C, a determination that the granting of a variance will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to public safety, extraordinary public expense, or will not create nuisances, cause fraud or victimization of the public, or conflict within this chapter. And D, a determination that the variance is the minimum necessary to afford relief. So if the ZBA decides to approve the variance, staff is recommending the following conditions. The applicant completes all conditions specified in the Eagle permit. And also from our engineering department, there's a few conditions, just that the deck is constructed with no connection to the residential structure. The area below the deck may not be enclosed at any point, and the area above the deck may not be enclosed at any point, such as turned into a 3 Seasons room.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chapman. And would the applicant or the applicant's representative like to speak anything on this case? You can or not, it's up to you,
I
but,
don't really have anything to add. Keith's been really helpful.
okay.
Kind of guiding me through this whole.
Okay, great. Yes, he's very good at that. All right, we may still want you to come up and answer some questions when we get in, but we'll get there when we get there. All right. On that note, if there's anybody else that would like to speak on this case, please step forward. As you're the only person here, I will close public remarks and I will move into our board time. I have just a clarification, I suppose. So the additional, this is for Keith, I'm sorry.
Yep.
The additional requirements from the engineer is one thing. What are the additional requirements, or what is the requirement from Eagle that would also be recommended if
So there's
we were to approve?
I'll pull it up here.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time trying to figure out
There's
exactly.
a lot of paperwork.
Yeah, exactly which one is where we're looking at stipulations here.
So right here,
Okay,
so authority granted by this permit is subject to the following limitations. So there's like 2 pages of, or 3
okay,
pages.
so those are all the stipulations from Eagle?
Yeah, it's just, yeah.
Okay.
That's just to make sure that those are all followed through with.
Okay, all right, I got it. So it wasn't just it's a whole list of stuff you gotta go through. All right, good to know. And that's part of the permitting process, meaning that Eagle will come through afterwards and double check, or how is that monitored?
Yeah, so they would inspect to make sure, yeah.
Okay, okay. That's the first question I had. Anybody else have questions, comments,
So
thoughts?
in putting this application before us, the applicant has agreed to these conditions from Eagle as a given. We don't need to tie any approval to these Eagle conditions, that it's a given that these would be met if this is granted?
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to look at it. It's just kind of a safe catch-all
Right.
type thing.
We would just add it as variance requested with special consideration that all of the Eagle requirements be met and these additional requirements be met from the township attorney, or engineer, excuse
yep.
me. Okay. I do have a question for the applicant, Mr. Smith. Could you just state your name and address for public record, please?
Aaron Smith, 4810 Arapahoe Trail, Okemos, 48864.
Okay, thank you so much. My question is, I guess I'm a little confused by one thing here with the engineer and one that was in your application materials, and that's regarding, I don't know how it was worded, but that it would be tied to the home. Can you expand on that?
So I did not know about the condition about from the engineer saying it shouldn't be connected to the home.
Okay.
So what I can do is simply for Carpentry Plus, the contractor that's doing it, it will just appear as though it's connected.
It will meet the house, but it
It'll
won't
meet the
attach
house
to the
and
house.
at a similar looking piece, but it won't actually be bolted onto the house.
Okay.
And instead, the pylons will be, well, just whatever the rules are and the stipulations.
Okay.
He'll have to follow those.
Okay,
And we'll just
so-
give him a copy of that and just, I'll monitor as it's being constructed. Given that, this is something that if it's not done right, would have to be removed and could cause a lot of extra expense for us.
Right.
And the contractor didn't even, this is something I had to do, like we pretty much paid to get this started, and then we found out as we did the Three Seasons room remodel that we would have to get a joint permit to do the deck. And so we had to stop construction. So we have materials on our property, nothing has been constructed, but our contractor I've had to do all this myself,
Right.
which is a little bit frustrating because, the permitting is pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what all of the other conditions are, but I just hope they don't add a lot of expense
Right.
on our end. But if they do, I'll just pay it because we really want to get this deck finished.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a relevant comment, but.
Well, I will say I appreciate you taking that stop because, that's the right thing to do, is take the stop, get the permit, figure it out. So I do very much, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of the rest of my board members, that we appreciate that you took the stop to permit. Yes, Keith?
Just as a point of clarification to the applicant, I think I mentioned it in my staff report. The biggest thing is in the permit is the structure being firmly anchored to prevent flotation or lateral movement. And so by, your posts being, in the ground, that's what they're looking for.
Right.
So that's the biggest thing on your
And it's
your
probably
part.
how they're going to do it. I actually don't think he would connect it to the house because the more I think about it, it's a lot of stress to have that structure being pulled away from the house, because of the movement over time. So, I don't even think, but I'll make sure, I will triple confirm when he starts building it that it cannot be bolted or in any way connected to the house, and because it's going to be inspected afterwards.
Yeah. Okay. I think that was just a point of clarification I had based on what the answers were for those criteria, which does ease my mind a bit on that question. My second question is in looking at your the survey, the KEB survey there, that, and this is going to go towards minimum action and practical difficulties, because I see a deck here, and then a new proposed deck area, and then and then two different patio levels. Can you walk us through, without having more visual images, it's hard to understand why this deck area is necessary when I see another deck area and a patio and a patio.
So that's not entirely true. So what
Okay.
you see in that hash marked
Right.
area is essentially like our whole backyard.
Okay.
That's a playable backyard that doesn't have a retaining wall. And so what was there before was a Three Seasons room addition that had like one of those bubble glass covers and a hot tub
Okay.
in it. And so we removed that. And then we stopped construction because we realized, well, if we build a deck, now we're getting into our variance and all this stuff. And that's when Keith said, you guys need to get the joint permit. So when we removed all of that, essentially what we have available is kind of a flat area, like a cement pad, and then a grass area, but it's not really level to be able to put, you know,
To use.
a hot tub and a dining room table. It's backyard stuff that you'd want. So that's why we wanted to build the deck. So that it would be like just a flat area. We could put an Arctic pool, Arctic spa from Heat and Sweep right there, and a nice dining room table. We have a cast aluminum dining table, and then that lower patio area that exists now. It's not super functional because of the mosquitoes and just the way it is close to the creek. But we were going to put just a small little fire pit and a couple of Adirondack chairs, and it'd be like a functional lower patio, but not really an area where we would be able to put like a dining room table, which we had before, but it just wasn't a very functional dining room area because it's big enough for a dining room table, but it's not really flat where you'd want like a deck would be flat to be able to serve food and just, you know, have family out there.
And what is the other deck portion that's off to the side that's in the gray, kind of next to the hashed area? There's
So
another.
that, I think you're pointing at the Three Seasons room, if I'm correct.
This right here, yeah.
Yeah, that's the Three Seasons room, and then there's a little walkway and a retaining wall, and then it drops down, and then it drops into the creek.
Let me see.
So I wish I would have actually taken
Right
this.
here, so that deck is really a three-season.
Yeah,
area.
that
Look
white
at there.
part
Okay,
is
so
Three
that
Seasons
is
room.
Yeah.
part of the home, essentially. Okay.
We
so
re-roofed it when we bought it.
So there is no deck.
there
per
is no
se.
deck. Okay, I guess that's where I'm having a hard time without seeing it. And looking at that, Kebs, I'm going, wait, if you have a deck already and two patios, why do we need this deck?
No, there's no
So-
deck. It's just like a
Okay.
stone.
So that
cement.
is part of the home, and then you have patio, and then that second patio shaded area is actually just the drop off to the creek. That's
Yeah.
not an actual usable space.
No, we have. Yeah. No.
Okay, I understand a little bit more now.
And there is a slight
think I had a
correction.
lot of questions before.
If you could go to my little homemade map that I made of the actual deck, I made an error and I want to clarify it for you guys. So
Okay.
the deck itself is 32 wide by 20 deep, and it doesn't go all the way to the retaining wall. There's actually a strip of grass, maybe about this thick, that you could drive a lawnmower through.
Okay.
And that is gonna be there. We're not gonna have it go all the way to the retaining wall.
Okay.
And there's a couple reasons for that, but the main reason is that obviously it shouldn't connect to the retaining wall. It should be like in the
Absolutely.
ground and rooted in and of itself.
Right.
Now that I've learned about deck construction and had a quick education in that. And so when I asked my wife about it, she said, yeah, there's gonna be a gap about this wide to draw it. So that map is a little bit inaccurate. It should be set back a little bit from the thing. And again, I wish my contractor would have actually, I mean, he's a great contractor. Carpentry Plus has great reviews and they do great work so far for what I've seen, but I would have really appreciated a professional like CAD drawing that I
Yes.
could have presented to you guys. I'm not a drafter, so this is like, very shabby, it's to scale, but it doesn't look, I'm not really happy with how it looks.
As busy as contractors have been lately, getting one to agree to do the work is probably remarkable in and of itself.
I know, they either do the work and don't do the
Absolutely.
design, or they do the design and don't do the work. That's
Right,
been my
right.
experience.
I agree. It's been a very tricky time for building. So, and just on your drawing, can I clarify that the circles are the pylons that'll be connected
Yes.
to the ground? Okay.
There'll be that amount and
That
the
amount,
exact-
I'm not to scale or anything, I'm trying to get an idea. So
Yeah,
that's
what I did
that's
was-
what's holding the structure up, that's what's connecting to the ground, so that's what's making it not,
Yeah.
able
And that's the
to.
issue with the displacement. So what I did
Yeah.
was I calculated based on the size, the width and depth, and then added them all up. And so it's, I think, 1.5 meters of displaced floodplain material.
Okay.
And so they said that's, I guess, acceptable.
Okay.
Based on, but
That-
Eagle said
that also
And they
helps.
didn't need us to refill it anywhere else or whatever their rules are.
Right, there's no additional.
But they made me
backfill
get a
necessary.
full like $500 permit. It wasn't like considered a small deal, but they approved it and moved through relatively quickly. So I really, besides the cost, I have no complaints. And I understand, we had neighbors 2 doors down. I don't know if you recall, they had to have all their stuff pulled out because they didn't get any permits or do anything. And
I do recall, I was on that
and
case.
the more I thought about
I
it,
recall
I
that
thought,
one very well.
I'm kind of glad that we have this because there is a process, and this neighborhood, we had flooding in the 70s, and it's
Yeah.
really, it's like I'm from California. It's like the opposite. We have too much water.
Right.
We got to figure out where it's all going to go.
Yeah, you're coming from California, you have
They're
no
not gonna
water.
have any water. Exactly.
Right, so we do have the opposite problem in the Great Lakes state here. We do have a lot of water.
And we had one big flood a few years ago, and we had to do remediation. So I have been a victim of it, so I know, and I want to make sure whatever we do there is going to be the right thing for the city and for our future, whoever we sell it to.
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate that very much. I think that, yes.
Quick
Member
question on
Shane.
the construction. Are these 4x4 or 6x6 posts that are holding this up?
Great question.
They are 42 inches deep and 14 inches wide, if that makes sense. So it's about 1.5 feet wide, and then they go down into the ground about 4 feet.
Wow. Okay.
And then I
Pretty
added them all up.
substantial.
That's how I came.
Yeah,
came
that
up
is
with
substantial.
Yeah, so pretty substantial. So I feel confident with that structure as far as not being in risk of floating away during a 100-year flood. That seems like that's substantial in structure enough to prevent any major issues. Well, any other thoughts or questions for our applicant? No?
Could we, I guess, besides the not attached to the house, is there any other things that you guys, the engineers need us to do? I know they said something about like a little
We
bit
can,
of a.
yeah, we can go through, I can, or Keith, if you want to read them, through the engineer's notes today, and those would be, we would ask that those be followed if we were to approve.
Yeah, so like I said, no connection to the structure. Can't enclose the area below the deck, which if you did, it would impede, the water flow.
So it should just be like when you look at it from the side. What are usually those little sticks that go on or whatever? You don't want those.
Lattice.
No lattices.
No lattice.
Nothing
okay.
under.
It's just got to be open.
Okay.
And then the area above, you can't enclose, like turn it into a 3-season room, which.
But we could put like a heat lamp and all the little
Yeah. that's-
backyard toys.
Yeah.
That
Yes.
I wanted to have a kid.
Yes.
And that's it.
Okay.
Those were-
That's it. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Okay, well, if nobody else has any comments or questions, I'm going to take a stab at criteria, and please feel free to jump in as I do so. If something makes you have any further questions. The first criteria being unique circumstances exist that are peculiar to the land or structure that are not applicable to other land or structures. And I will say, it's this area does feel to me as each lot is very particular, especially with the rules and regulations with the within the floodplain there. So I will easily meet that criteria for criteria 1. Criteria 2 being strict interpretation and enforcement of the literal terms and provisions of this chapter would result in practical difficulties that would prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose. I can meet that as well. I did have some questions because it felt like, where are we finding the practical difficulties if we have several patios and decks and things? So seeing it a little bit more clearly, I can meet the practical difficulty of not having a level surface with which to access in the rear of the home. I can meet that. I think that's fairly reasonable to meet that criteria for practical difficulties. Any thoughts or questions or concerns on that one? All right, moving on to criteria 3, granting the variance is the minimum action necessary, which would carry out the spirit of the zoning ordinance, secure public safety, and provide substantial justice. Again, I do think that the applicant is very willing to, and I do feel like this is as minimal as we can get. We're not going over the retaining wall. We're keeping within just a flat anchored surface, and I don't see this to be an extraordinary amount of action taken here. Any thoughts or questions on minimum action? Okay.
I would concur.
All right. Then moving on to criteria number 4, granting the variance will not adversely affect adjacent land or the essential character or vicinity of the property. The fact that we've taken such care and that you're willing to work within the Eagle specifications and the engineer specifications tells me that if there is something that happened, if there is the 100-year flood, if there is a big, issue, that your property is not going to be the cause of any concern or problem for the area, for the creek, for the waterway. So for that reason, I'm comfortable granting meeting criteria number 4. And criteria number 5, granting the variance will be generally consistent with the public interest and purposes and intent of this chapter. And I would agree with that. We want people to be able to live comfortably in their homes. And with that, let's see, there were a couple other criteria as well, right, Keith?
Yeah.
Okay, so now let me get back to those additional, okay. Here we go. This is from section 86-436R. No variance shall be granted for the development of new structures, the substantial improvement or relocation of old structures, or development of any kind within the floodway area when such development, construction, improvement, or relocation would cause any increase in flood levels associated with the base flood elevation. I think that between Eagle and the engineer, we have gotten to a point where we can safely meet that criteria. Criteria number 2, a sufficient cause for granting the variance must be shown. A determination that failure to grant the variance would result in practical difficulty, and a determination that granting the variance will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to public safety, extraordinary public expense, and will not create nuisances, cause fraud, or victimization of the public or conflict of this chapter. And finally, a determination that the variance is the minimum necessary to afford relief. And I can meet all of those criteria there. So with that, I would move to approve this variance based on meeting our 5 criteria, the additional criteria from section 86436R. And I would say with my motion to approve that that is with the understanding that the applicant will meet all of the pages of Eagle determination there on permitting, and also the 3 main criteria that the township engineer has set out for us. So that is my motion.
I support your motion.
Okay, supported by Member DeShane. Discussion of the motion on the table.
Our criteria are not easy to meet, and yet the applicant's also willing to meet the 26 Eagle criteria that proposed. Clearly willing to stay within the parameters of building in the floodplain. So, I mean, Eagle is being much stricter than we are in this case, and they're doing much of the heavy lifting here, requiring that this be done the right way. So if the applicant is willing to meet the Eagle requirements as well, clearly you showed intent to stay within the regulations for this variance. So I have no problem supporting this variance.
All right. All right, in that case, we will go to a vote. This is a vote to approve the application for ZBA case number 22-10-19-2 Smith. And that is with the additional criteria by the township engineer and by the Eagle permitting criteria. Member Koenig?
Yes.
Member DeShane?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So your variance has been approved. Just make sure you follow that. Give those 2 pages to your contractor and make sure those are followed to the letter, and you should be in good standing.
When I got the Eagle permit, did you get those 26?
I have them, yes.
Will you, can you forward that to me?
Yeah, yep.
I believe I got them, I just,
Yeah.
I'll make sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's quite a bit. That is
Okay, yeah.
very strict.
I'll send it to you
There's
tomorrow.
actually
I'll send
3
you an
pages of
email
it.
letter.
Easy,
Yeah, those are.
If he
that's
wants
3
to
pages of
talk
it, so.
to me or the building inspector, feel free.
You know him pretty well, have you talked to him before?
I didn't talk to him. I talked to your wife first. Yeah. Can't think of.
With no further business and no
Yes.
members of the public, I move we adjourn.
Hey, in that case, I
Support.
would support without
There you go.
without
Wants to call
any
me.
public members
I can
present
talk to her.
and no board comments necessary.
Nope. And I'll
Meeting
forward
is
you all
therefore
that
adjourned at
information.
7:24 by
Like I
myself
said,
this
the
time.
biggest thing is making sure that it's